this is update for May 9, but also catch up for May 7 and 8. This is day 444 of the war and of the date update. So I just want to focus today mostly on the military side of things, but I do want to mention that there is a lot of going on, general sort of strategic and in economic news. I will try to focus it on that topic on Thursday or Friday, but I just want to give you a heads up. There were data coming out of the US on productivity and unit labor costs, and it just plain horrific. I would say it's almost like the specifically productivity is simply terrible. What this really means that inflation will persist, will stay high, and the interest rates will have to stay high in order to deal with this situation and keep the system in control out of the simply collapsing, because the numbers that especially for productivity and unit labor costs are related to the productivity almost mean that this is like a societal collapse in a way. So they are so terrible. Obviously, this is just one number. We'll see if this is a trend. But if this persists, it's gonna be extremely concerning. Also, in Germany, there were numbers coming out, and also about the industrial production. They were also pretty bad. And there's also data out of China, which export-import data, which is also very concerning. So as you can see, the things are in sort of all, I would say, three main engines of the world economic development are not going well. But I'll focus on that more in the next video. Now let's switch to situation in Ukraine. And first, let me actually jump. Let's discuss this highly expected, highly, let's say, discussed offensive that Ukrainian troops are supposed to do sometime soon. As a heads up, Ukrainian president is back in Ukraine. So apparently he didn't stay for the much longer in Europe. It's unclear if that visit to Germany was cancelled or what's the plan. But it doesn't look that Ukrainian, as I said before, doesn't look that Ukrainian offensive is going to happen before, let's say, May 15, and could be a little bit later. But the probability is extremely high, sometime close to 15, and thereafter, obviously depending on the weather. But let's actually first look at the Russian expectations of what's going to happen, sort of where the offensive is going to happen. So this is what the sort of Russian side is expecting. I'm not saying that this is the only option. This is one of the many scenarios, because it's always, you consider many scenarios, right? So this is one of the scenarios that is the Russian side is sort of considering when they're looking at this offensive. So as I said before, this is Zaporizhya section, Zaporizhya Frontline. It's the most primitive scenario, the most primitive sort of approach, right? Just run to the Azov Sea and cut Russian troops into two halves. Basically, the main one that's still connected to obviously the Russia, and then obviously create a huge encirclement with these troops in the North Azov area, and then Crimea itself. This is something that I would not be surprised that Ukrainian command will attempt to do, because it's the most primitive, I would say. However, at the same time, this approach has lowest probability of success, in my opinion, because there is already high expectation on the Russian side where the attack is going to be. I'm pretty sure that there are reserves already being pulled into this area and so on. So you're going to be hitting in the most expected area, where the in hottest area and the most sort of densely covered by the opposing troops. So the probability of success here, in my opinion, is fairly low. Um, at the same time, this approach does not require high skills from the troops and high skills from the command. A very primitive approach. I just want to share an alternative approach that would have been much better. And the main approach here is, initially attacking obviously on the entire section of the front line, even including the um, forming tiny bridgeheads on the Dnipro River to confuse and potentially exploit. If things will go well, there is opportunity to exploit if there is success, but you never know. Most of them will not be successful, but there's a chance that one of these bridgeheads will be successful. At the same time, obviously attacking where the Russian side is the most expecting, which is this Orikhiv, Takmak, and then Guляй-Pole, Pologi area, and also towards Vasilievka. But the main attack the best would be to actually cut off this salient around Velika Novosilievka. The Russians on the Russian side actually encircle and destroy Russian troops in that small pocket, and then move towards Mariupol and basically Novoazovsk, with potential attempt to create another pocket of these troops that are facing Vuhledar and attacking them from the from the rear. This has, I would say, probably least expected from the Russian side, and has the biggest potential because it allows to destroy these troops, hit them from the actually rear, and then kind of slowly start moving in, destroying Russian troops in all of this area. So this requires a lot of skills from the troops, from the command, because there is high probability of Russian counterattacks here, and you really need to move quick and form this sort of area, the sort of occupy this area very quickly, or gain control of it. By the way, going back to this Russian sort of expectations, the expectation it will take 10 days for Ukrainian troops to reach Berdyansk and Primorsk here on the Azov Sea. That's another reason I would say why this is not going to be successful, because Ukrainian offensive can only be successful if it's quick. It has to be, I mean, it's not going to be 1 day, but it has to be 2-3 days at most. Otherwise, it's not going to be simply successful, because Russian command will start pumping up troops from all sides, from everywhere, and it just and the offensive will simply bog down. So the same here is, there is element of surprise, even though there's obviously no surprise overall, because Russian command is definitely expecting attack on the Zaporizhya front line, because it's very obvious to them. At the same time, there's still sort of attempt to create moment of surprise, where opportunity to do that is very limited in the first place. And then also the positive here is also creating initial successes, right, by destroying this small pocket here and then a little bit bigger pocket here, which will essentially collapse Russian front line in this whole area. And that will make it much easier to basically establish this whole zone, sort of separation zone between the main Russian army and this encircled Russian part. But as I said, this requires a lot of skills, especially for these operations here on the Dnipro River. So this would be possible, let's put this way, if this could be executed with, let's say, if all of the troops were similar to Azov or Wagner Group. So then it's possible. But with the Soviet armies, which both Ukrainian and Russian are, this is a nearly impossible exercise. Now let's actually do a walk through the front line. So first, let's look at North Lugansk. Situation here is stable. There is some activity. There are some never-ending fights in this forest here, but it's all tactical sort of skirmishes. Nothing really of major significance here. Now let's move to North Donbass front line. So it looks like there are two Russian airborne divisions here operating 98th and 106th. Don't know exactly sort of perfectly location of those, so eventually it will be clear. But it's very clear that one of them is sort of north of Bakhmut, potentially the other one is south, but it's possible that both of them operating north of Bakhmut. So so far everything is also quiet here. And then essentially Wagner mercenaries are depleted, as I said before. There is this sort of drama going on. Oh, we're getting this shells, so we're not getting shells with Wagner mercenaries. We're getting support, and then next day we're not getting support. So the key point is that they are depleted. They can be rebuilt pretty quickly into again very dangerous organization, but it looks like the internal infighting there on the Russian side prevents them from being rebuilt, and it's unclear if they're still gonna stay past May 10. But even if they stay, they all they can do at this point is purely defensive operations. They essentially not capable of much of the offensive operations in this shape without getting sort of replenishment in terms of people and especially shells. As I said, that sounds like that problem is still there. But I just want to discuss a little bit different situation and what is happening as a result of Wagner mercenaries being depleted and not able to put enough pressure. This frees up for Ukrainian side some of the more capable and better resources, which is this third brigade, which is I mentioned that this is sort of attempt to resurrect Azov. It's shadow of Azov, but still definitely much better than the rest Ukrainian units. In a way, they sort of comparable forces, meaning Wagner mercenaries and Azov. They're not, how to say, comparable like apples to apples, but one of them is better in one area, another in the other one. But effectively, they are definitely not, I would say, they're not Soviet units. They are maybe nucleus of future different armies for both sides. And so, as I said, they are comparable. They are on the same level. Azov is definitely much smaller. Wagner mercenaries is much bigger, but at this point it's depleted. So what happened is Azov has moved a little bit out of the Bakhmut area, direct Bakhmut, facing directly Bakhmut, and there was actually bridgehead here, which I missed, but I mentioned this before that there is this freshwater channel that's going on that's feeding. Supposed to feed Donbass with fresh water from, I think, from Dnipro River, if I'm correct. And so this was sort of natural defensive barrier between the two, and for Ukrainian side. However, Wagner mercenaries managed to capture bridgehead here, where I'm showing roughly approximately in this area. Which is obviously very negative because that creates opportunity to continue. It's a launch pad to continue attack and to continue attack towards Konstantinivka, right? So that launch pad was destroyed by Azov on the 9th, and they actually destroyed. There was quite significant losses that they inflicted, and the reason it was destroyed because there were no Wagner mercenaries. There was a 72nd Russian brigade, and they essentially ran away. They lost like at least 2 companies, completely annihilated, severely damaged there. Don't know if it's a reconnaissance company or reconnaissance battalion, but they suffered pretty heavy losses. They basically ran away and abandoned this bridgehead. And so again, this goes back to the concerns that uh, the head of Wagner mercenaries had, where the flanks are pretty exposed in terms of the quality of the troops. Maybe the northern one is in better shape because it's airborne, but it looks like southern flank is pretty exposed. As we can see, this Soviet army is no match to the let's call it entrepreneurial organization, which is Azov is the same way as Wagner mercenaries is. And so that's a major update here. I'm pretty sure as Wagner mercenaries are on depleted and essentially on defensive, this sort of that this opportunity will be exploited more and more by Azov, maybe other units here. So we'll see what sort of developments are going to be happening here. But the situation around Bakhmut is very ripe. As I said, it's very similar to uh, German army in Stalingrad in November of 1942. And that's the only question if Ukrainian command at the higher level will be able to exploit this, because obviously Azov cannot do everything because it's just one brigade, um, and you need many more troops to actually create encirclement here. Now let's move to central Donbass front line. Things here are more or less the same. No changing attacks in Marinka. That's the main point. But effectively, the front line here is also freezing, and Russian side is preparing for Ukrainian offensive, and the whole point what the Russian side is trying to do, they trying to preserve shells and accumulate inventory of shells, uh, so that they can be used against Ukrainian troops that will go into offensive. And that's part of the reason why Wagner mercenaries doesn't get much, because simply Russia doesn't have, and there is some kind of let's say delusional thinking, that there is some kind of like secret inventory that's bottomless sort of pit, and you can get whatever you want. And reality is Russia is scraping bottom of the barrel. Ukraine obviously is in an even worse situation. There is not even enough AKs at this point. Ukraine is getting more and more, even personal like rifles, all of that. It's becoming more and more from coming from the US or from Europe. But basically, even small arms are becoming, call it, NATO ones, and essentially, eventually this AKs will sort of end, and Ukraine will sort of naturally completely will get off all the Soviet weapons, just because it will run out of it. This is the situation around Avdiivka, which is not changing. Everything, as I said, frozen. So another situation on the Zaporizhya front line is the same. There is no sort of activity. Russian side is definitely spotting build up of Ukrainian troops in Zaporizhia area. So there are obviously attacks and attempts to attack and disrupt this offensive, for obvious reasons by Russian side. But we'll see. Probably it's sort of happening probably in 5 to 10 days, extremely high probability, unless it's being called off for some reason, or which is possible as well. And but I think the pressure is such, not from externally, obviously, but also internally in the society in Ukraine, that there is sort of pressure to do something to show some results, and in a way, it could be really backfire if there are no results. That could lead, if not to 1917 moment in Ukraine, that will bring it much 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 closer in Ukraine, because so far Russia is actually ahead on that path of Ukraine, which I thought that Ukraine will come there much faster than Russia, but actually Russia is getting there, uh, you know, getting there faster than Ukraine. Let's put it this way. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and until next time. Bye bye.